This is literally the third time I've recorded this, so whatever this is it. Hey guys, it's model making time, and today we're looking at the Folland Gnat. Later this would be known as the Hawker Siddeley Gnat. Now this is something I've already built before. I built it as the Yellowjacks display team, so we're going to sort of do a history of the Red Arrows, the same way I've done La Patrouille de France and Il Frecce Tricolore. We're going to look at the full display team. It's controversial whether or not that should include the BAC Strike Master Jet Provost. Some view as the sort of heritage of the Red Arrows. In other people's perspective, it's just the Yellowjacks and then the Red Arrows Gnat. So it really depends on sort of how you view the lineage. I've used two main sources of information whenever I've looked at the Red Arrows, and that's this DVD and this book. The book I bought from Coventry Air Museum. The DVD, I don't know where I bought. I know I bought it there as well, but like ages ago. I don't know, I've had it for a long time. I think it's pretty much free on YouTube at the moment, but shh, don't tell anyone. We'll do the history of the display team first, and then we'll do the history of the aircraft. Back in the day, it wasn't particularly uncommon for a display team to form from a training squadron or even some fighter squadrons. They would use various different aircraft, and the Yellowjacks was one such team. We've looked at some of the previous display teams before, such as the Blue Diamonds, the Black Arrows, and we've indeed, as I've said before, done the Gnats before when we did the 40th anniversary Red Arrow set. So, the Yellowjacks. The Yellowjacks were formed in RAF Valley, which is in Anglesey, North Wales. A lot of people I feel like don't know where that is, but it's a really pretty part of the country. Ugh, I hope I can live there one day. They flew the Gnat, which was made by Folland, and later Hawker Siddeley. The Yellowjacks had a distinctive paint scheme, and yes, you've guessed it, it was yellow. And the only difference was on the leader's tail they had a black tail, which really stood out, and to be honest, I think they should have all had black tails. Now, they flew from 1963 until 1965. The sources I've seen and read sort of indicate that they had a bit of a reputation, whether that was for the sort of manoeuvres that they pulled or sort of their general attitude towards displaying in general. And so they were sort of brought into line with the RAF or the Royal Air Force by rebranding them and reforming them as the Red Arrows. Now there's a few different reasons that people have suggested for the change in paint colour. Some have suggested that it was because the RAF only wanted one display team, and so the Red Pelicans would no longer be a thing, and so in order to sort of pay respect to their lineage, they'd be using red. On the other hand, it's more so suggested that yellow just isn't a great colour for display aircraft. I think that's a lie, because yellow is amazing. And so in order to have them all visible across the sky, they have them as red. And that's why today we have the Red Arrows rather than the Yellowjacks. Quick side note, but one of the main like what ifs I always see around is people doing the BA Hawk in the Yellowjacks colours, and it's one I've never done. I don't think I've ever done a what if, so you know what, maybe I have to do that someday. So from 1965 onwards, the Yellowjacks were no more, and they would be flying as the Red Arrows from then onwards. That would be up until 1979 when the Red Arrows would stop using the Folland Gnat, or the Hawker Siddeley Gnat as it was I think at that point, and they would move on to the BA Hawk in 1980. The Gnat was used as their primary mount, and they displayed around the world with it. It really cemented their reputation with their colour scheme and the branding of the Royal Air Force as the Red Arrows. They became known as a premier display team, one of the world's best, and it's quite impressive considering the aircraft they had. In my opinion, I think it's a bizarre aircraft, and we'll go into the history of that now. W.E.W. Patter became part of Folland, and they became the managing director and chief engineer. They saw a different perspective to how sort of the Air Ministry was going about securing its aircraft at the time. Instead of looking at sort of quality over quantity, they were concerned more about being able to produce an aircraft in mass quantity and having something that was really simple and easy to operate. At the time, aircraft were becoming increasingly more complicated. I mean, just look at the things like the Gloucester Javelin and the Hawk Hunter, which were in service at the time. So in order to counter that, the Gnat was made as a light fighter, a light attacker, and it was done as a really simple aircraft in comparison to those sort of behemoths. I say behemoth, but really it's just that the Gnat was absolutely tiny. That's why its sort of prototype or private launch version was called the Midge. So the Gnat F1 was demonstrated to the RAF, and they had pretty much no interest in the aircraft and couldn't see a future for it. So Folland went back and they reintroduced the aircraft, or rebranded the aircraft as a training aircraft, as a two-seat trainer. And this would have Air Forces a lot more interested in the design, being lightweight and easy to use, but also great for transitioning to more frontline fighters such as the English Electric Lightning, which the RAF was going on to use. The aircraft would see sales to Yugoslavia, Finland and India. There is a Finnish version at the Coventry Air Museum, or at least there was as I remember. If it's still there, feel free to check it out. It's a really good museum and it's a really cool example. Remember the F1 version, the fighter version we were on about earlier? Well, India sort of developed their own version of that through HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, called the Ajit. And yeah, it was sort of an uprated, sort of more advanced version of the Gnat as a single-seat sort of fighter variant. So it's sort of really weird how it sort of came full circle, but in a really roundabout way and internationally. Obviously in the United Kingdom, the aircraft saw widespread adoption by the Royal Air Force, including at RAF Valley, where the Yellow Jacks would form, and that brings us sort of full circle. The example we're looking at today is from Airfix. The original Gnat variant, which was the one I initially looked at on this channel, which was the one I built for the RAF 40th anniversary set, that one was from the 60s. It really shows its age, and unfortunately it was still being sold up until 2009. I would recommend you always look at scalemates if you're looking to buy a second-hand Gnat. Make sure you are buying the newer tooling, not the old tooling, because the boxes are similar. The old tooling did have a release in 2009 in the new shiny red boxes, so just make sure you're not buying that variant, because honestly it's not worth the money. It should just be recycled at this point. And I'm not one who's like hate on older kits. There are some old kits I absolutely love, and I've built quite a few on this channel, but that kit is just not worth the money, especially when you can buy the new Gnat for barely a penny more. So this tooling comes from 2012 and comes from the era where Airfix are really starting to cement themselves as a quality manufacturer, not just like a manufacturer of kits, but they were a quality model kit manufacturer. Personally, I absolutely adore this kit. I think it's really easy to put together. It's brilliant for a beginner, so the starter sets of this I think are one that you could always recommend to newcomers to the hobby, old or new. Obviously I'm biased towards the Yellow Jacks because yellow, but the Red Arrow is one that people are going to recognise and is also worth building. It's got a really weird profile as aircraft because it sits so low to the ground and it's just so tiny, so it's always just really amusing to see people's faces when they see it next to other aircraft. So if you've made it this far into the video, please feel free to drop me a subscribe, it really does help, and if you hit the notification bell, you'll be reminded of new videos which go live every Monday at 7:30 PM. I do stream as well on Sundays at 4:30, you know, most of the time, but I do also have a life as well to leave. So let's go and have a look inside the box. Boom! Sorry for the old formatting. Sometimes I film videos out of order. So this is the instructions, and the instructions are pretty good. It's, again, not newest format for Airfix, but it was better than, you know, the really old instructions. It's that in-between stage, it's a bit awkward, and I wish they had the coloured sort of decal layout on the back, but sadly they don't, and that's just unfortunate, but it's on the back of the box. Now we have the sprues themselves, and they're pretty good quality, I must say. And again, I think you'll hear me say it multiple times in this video, it's a time where Airfix was really starting to up its game, and you can see that in this kit. The panel lines are probably slightly deeper than they would be to scale, but I mean, that's sometimes just a necessary evil. The pilots themselves are pretty well molded, as you can see here. Like, actually wouldn't mind putting these on there, but I just need to get some sort of magnifying glass so I can paint them properly. Now, the sprues themselves, the plastic feels really, really nice. It's a really, really good quality finish, and it's not really any flash or issues really that you would have to deal with. A new person could take this kit and just use it straight out of the box. The wings are entirely on one section, the fuselage on the other, and the rest of it's sort of evenly spread out between the two, but there is some logic to what's on each sprue, I feel, which is really helpful. The transparency. So this one has quite good transparency, I'd say. It's probably not the best quality in the world, but it's definitely not the worst by any standards of the imagination. You get a really good colour through it, so there's no like dullness to the canopy. The shaping of it's really good. It's just, I don't know, there's something not quite right about it. It doesn't have that je ne sais quoi, so I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, I think that's probably about there. The decals are really simple, but really good. Airfix again knocked it out of the park with this one. The inside cockpit is just the panel. Outside They're really vibrant, they're beautiful, they're bold, and they held up relatively well. So that's it for this kit. It's a really simple kit, but yeah, it all seems really quite straightforward and, well, to a good standard, I'd say. As you can see, nothing surprising there. The kit looks amazing, so let's get into the construction. Construction of this kit is really straightforward, and as usual, I started with the wings. Now, I do this because the wings tend to be something you put on midway through, but actually the first step is normally just joining the two parts together. So doing them at the start and then leaving them means they're going to solidify and be quite strong, and in some kits the wings can be quite important. Always check the instructions though, sometimes you do need them to be separate until the fuselage is already put together and one section is joined, so just always check the instructions. I did the cockpit, and the cockpit itself is really, really nice considering the scale. As it's 1/72 again, I'm not massively fussed on the cockpit, it's not something I'm going to really look at. However, for those of you who want a really highly detailed cockpit, this is a great jumping off point for you to start experimenting and adding in extra details, whether that's some post-market photo etch kits, which I'm sure you can probably get, or adding some fabric or card or whatever you want to use to try and add some extra detail in. But the basic cockpit itself is so good, like it really does add a depth to the actual model kit itself. If I'd done this with an open cockpit, I think I would have been really happy with the result. Maybe that's something I should do more in the future. Obviously we did that on the Jet Provost one, and if you haven't seen that video, watch it after this one. The fuselage itself is pretty straightforward. There are some little parts you need to put in, mainly surrounding the air intake and the landing gear. Now the landing gear in this kit, which we'll go on to shortly, is something I'm actually really happy with. It really holds up the model really well. The only sad thing is on my Yellow Jacks one, I didn't quite do it right, whereas on the Red Arrows one, I think it's absolutely correct. So both of them look slightly different, but you know what? Landing gear is bloody good, especially because this is such a small aircraft and it's so low to the ground. I can't imagine how hard it must have been, or how many times they must have had to do prototypes to get this model kit to work perfectly, to get small diddy landing gear that actually holds up the weight of the aircraft, because in some aircraft, like the Alpha Jet, as I always complain about, that's just not the case. I painted the interior of the cockpit section ready to assemble the fuselage. The cockpit has been fully painted, it's mainly just an array of dark colours, which, standard for the time, because this is in that transitional period between World War II and sort of the modern age, so most cockpits were pretty dark and dreary, to be perfectly honest with you. So I've now put together the entire aircraft. So I've put the wings on that I had earlier, the fuselage parts have been put together, and I've put in the two tail sections, so where the elevators are as well. The landing gear's already been put in place, and I think if I remember correctly, I actually put them in the wrong way around and had to reassemble it. Yeah, there we go. I put them in the wrong way around. This is why you should always check the instructions like 4 times before you do it. Like, check twice, glue once, the same way as like it's normally, what is it, check, measure twice, cut once. Yeah, I should have done that in this instance. I don't know why, I think I just got confused in my brain about what way was the right way around. But again, it was easy enough to fix because I noticed it really early on. If I'd noticed this later, it would have been probably death's door for it, because I don't think there really would have been a way to save the kit and I would have had to start again. I decided I was going to try and use Maskell in this instance. I've never really used it before, I think I've used it twice, but never properly given it a go. So this whole kit is going to be painted with Humbrol's red spray can, rattle can, however you want to describe it. I was very nervous because I'm so scared of ruining transparent parts because I am not experienced enough to salvage them. But this seemed like the easiest option. I bought the rattle can for cheap, as I said in the previous Red Pelicans video, from a model shop near where I grew up that went out of business. And it was really cheap, so I just thought, hey, I'll get it even if I don't really use it. Well, this was going to be it. I was going to use it and it's my first time. And it's a cheap kit, I didn't want to experiment with this sort of thing, using Maskell, on a more expensive kit. So we needed to leave the Maskell to dry to make sure that, it was going to fully protect that transparent part, and then we sprayed it. And, well, let's have a look at me peeling it off. Okay, so you can see I did accidentally pull off the actual canopy itself, however, it did work. I got some overflow that you can see on the side, so I am going to have to repaint some areas of it, which is unfortunate. But it was a first try, and I'm not too sad about it. I just put too much on. So once we've cleaned it up, it's time to put the decals on. I've obviously sprayed the model, I think, with the glossy coat. It might have even been a sort of a semi-matte coat, I can't remember. So we were putting on the decals, and we're putting them on with water and then setting them with decals set afterwards. The decals were really, really nice, and they fit the model absolutely perfectly. They do also adhere to the model really well, so they do sink in well enough. They're not too thick, which is also really, really nice. There was a lot of waiting obviously in this bit, which is why there are lots of gaps between me doing anything, because I'm waiting for the decals to soak up. A lot of people have said to use warm water. I always use cold water just because my bathroom's next door to where my office is, and it's just easier and I'm incredibly lazy. But let me know, do you use hot or cold water? Putting all the roundels on, I was using reference images online, and I used the back of the box to spray the model. Because there's no decal instructions in the kit itself, it's only on the back of the box, you're screwed if you do this or if you throw the box away at the start like I often do. So just bear that in mind. Either way, the decals were really, really easy to put on. I found no difficulty whatsoever putting anything on or matching anything together. It was really, really nice. Really straightforward. The bottom of the aircraft as well does have a couple of decals, and it's mainly large lettering. For this, I was using my Yellow Jacks model that I've already completed to make sure that I was matching up how they should look, because it's quite hard to get a sense from online pictures I found, so I was just using the one I've already completed that I was already really happy with to make sure I was going to get the similar result. And hey, in the end, I think I did, and I did it pretty well, so yeah, it does work, is what I'm trying to say. You can see me putting it on there, so it's the serial number of the aircraft basically. It always just makes me feel like they should be more closer together, but they're not, they are quite distant. That was pretty much it for the aircraft. There wasn't really too much to go. Other than that, it's painting the canopy, which again we'll go on to in a moment. There were little like pylons on top that I'd accidentally cut off, so I did just cut some sprue and put them on. Now once I'd done the actual model itself, I covered it in ink, and that's why it looks really dirty right now. This would eventually be sort of rubbed off, as you can see, with paper. And I don't think it shows too well on the video, but in person, the model looks actually a lot better because it's sunk into the panel lines. Now, because the rattle cam wasn't 100% perfect, I did have to go over it a couple of times, and it does mean I probably lost some detailing. But I think overall, what I've got with this model kit is not bad. And hey, I've used 2 new techniques. I've used Mascol and I've used inks, which I've done on aircraft, but it's something I'm always hesitant to do because I'm scared of ruining the model. The 2 new techniques on one aircraft. I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like that's quite an accomplishment, right? Like, I should be proud of myself, right? Well, construction was relatively straightforward, and before we go into talking about what went wrong and what went right, let's have a look at the finished product, and yeah, we'll see the Yellow Jacks again.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that. I think she's feeling me, turn it up a few degrees. My imagination of her body gets the best of me. Oh gosh, she's such a tease, bitten lips, bruised knees. I'm addicted to her, need her touching me, cause she got a bad little waist. And we tearing down this place, off the liquor that we chase. Casamigos to the face, baby, I don't need no space. Coming closer for a taste, and I'll show you how I make everything just fade away. Cause she's like sex, drugs, cocaine, body so insane. Jealous of the clothing that she wears up on that tight frame. All game, no shame, baby came here to play. I feel like an addict cause she's sex, drugs, cocaine.
Well, that kit went interestingly. I used a new technique which I wouldn't have used if I'd let take control, and I wouldn't have done it on a more rare or expensive kit, so I'm glad I did it on this one. Maskol is a weird thing to use, and I understand now why people are using masking tape and then Maskol, because it stops you getting sort of the Maskol going over the side of the kit. And I think I was using way too much. I think you only need a really thin layer, but I was using loads because I was really scared of ruining the canopy, and then I ended up snapping the canopy and now it's got a crack in it, but I'm not buying a new one because screw that. I'm also too scared to fix it, so it is what it is. Ultimately, I think we got a good looking aircraft, and I think the inks worked. I mean, at least I tried with the inks, and maybe they don't look the best, but they're good by my standards. Using the Humbrol spray felt like a bit of a cheat, but in hindsight, it's not. And I used a yellow spray can on the Yellow Jacks one anyway, so it's sort of fitting, really. And I mean, yeah, okay, it does sort of take some of the fun out of it, because I love the painting aspect, but when you're painting just one colour, like, it's fine, I think. And it makes something that takes like half an hour take like 2 minutes, so I don't think it's a bad thing. I felt kind of rough when I was building this kit. Obviously, I'm still recovering from the old Rona that I had, which apparently can take months, so yay! But having some extreme fatigue and brain fog from that sometimes just meant I wanted to do a really simple kit, and I was able to, because this kit is fantastic, and make no mistake, like, Airfix, you did a banging job on this kit. So buy or fly. Well, I'd have to absolutely say, buy this kit. If you see the old one though, the old tooling, fly. Fly away. In fact, don't even fly. Pick up that kit and yeet it into the sun, because that kit is worth nothing. But honestly, recycle where you can, obviously. But this kit is incredible. It's really good value for money. You tend to find them in model shops between 7 to 10 euros or pounds, depending on where you are. I think I bought both of mine, the Yellow Jacks one and the Red Arrows one, from sort of a local model shop, so an independent shop, and yeah, they both look great, so I'm really happy with them. I think that's all we have time for today though, guys. Thanks for joining me, guys. Remember to subscribe to be notified of new videos, and drop a like below, it really does help me out. Comment down below what your favourite display team is too, because, you know, I'm always looking at what to do next. See you later, guys. Bye! Thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button and notification bell to be notified of every new video on Mondays. You'll also be able to see me stream live on YouTube. Thanks again, I really appreciate it. Have fun modelling!